Just about everybody agrees that President Trump's pick to head the CIA is eminently qualified. Gina Haspel has served for decades at the agency around the world. She's now the deputy director. So in a normal political environment, she probably would get the top job pretty easily. But her nomination has gotten sort of inextricably bound up with Bush-era politics and gender politics. Let's take the second one first. There's been a lot of hand-wringing on the left because the incontrovertible fact is that Gina Haspel, if confirmed, would be the first woman to run the CIA. Sarah Huckabee Sanders pointing this out in a tweet. There's no one more qualified, says the press secretary, to be the first woman to lead the CIA than 30-plus year CIA veteran Gina Haspel. Any Democrat who claims to support women's empowerment and our national security but opposes her nomination is a total hypocrite. So some critics are saying, well, she's playing the woman card. She's playing the gender card. And to some extent, that's true. And guess what? Just about every administration does some version of this because nominating somebody who would be the first woman, the first black, the first Hispanic complicates the politics for those who would oppose the nomination. So, for example, Bill Clinton, when he named Janet Reno the first female to run the Justice Department, when he named Madeleine Albright first woman Secretary of State. Same thing with Barack Obama. Eric Holder, first black Attorney General. Sonia Sotomayor, first Hispanic member of the Supreme Court. Not to say that any of them weren't qualified, but it was always sort of an extra layer of, well, how can you vote against somebody who would be so groundbreaking? I thought Sarah Sanders was a little, to say that you're a hypocrite if you oppose her suggests that you can oppose her, whereas maybe if she was a man with the same record, the same credentials, maybe you could oppose her. But, the idea that there's some sort of moral outrage and shock here that Sanders would point out that she would be the first woman, I think is a little bit misplaced. And the reason this is so much in the news, not just is that her hearing is this week, because the Washington Post yesterday broke the story that Gina Haspel had actually, late last week, told White House officials she wanted to withdraw her nomination and was sort of talked into continuing by Sarah Sanders herself and by Mark Short, the chief congressional lobbyist for the White House. And the reason is there is a lot of opposition on the left having nothing to do with gender, but having to do with her role in what the CIA calls enhanced interrogation. That is, back in 2002, Gina Haspel oversaw a secret CIA prison in Thailand where two people were subjected to waterboarding, which many critics say is the equivalent of torture. Was a big debate about that, of course. And 3 years later, she was involved, according to what the Senate committee is looking into, with the destruction of videotapes, nearly 100 videotapes showing this waterboarded interrogation. So that's a legitimate debate, except for this thing. This was George W. Bush's policy in the wake of 9/11. Gina Haspel didn't make that policy. She was a foot soldier. She was an agent. She was somebody who went around the world. She went along with what was a controversial policy, but it was the Bush administration's policy. So is it fair right now to deny her the nomination to run the agency, which she's devoted much of her adult life, as President Trump's pick because she was following orders under a previous president? That strikes me as being a little bit of a stretch, perhaps some partisan politics involved. So whether her name is Jean or Gina, it seems to me she should be judged on her own merits. Senators should ask tough questions of every high-level nominee, but some of these things seem a bit of a stretch for somebody, now the deputy director, by the way, who seems eminently qualified to run that agency.